This is Dave Sugarbaker. Today is the 29th of October, 2023, and I've got a very familiar story, one of Jesus' teaching parables, and this is one of the most famous ones. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "What is written in the law?" he replied. "How do you read it?" He answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." "You have answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this and you will live." But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" In reply, Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, he passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. 'Look after him,' he said, 'and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have.' Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers?" The expert in the law said, "The one who had mercy on him." Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." I happened across a video online of a piece of a commencement speech by a visiting dignitary. I don't know who it was. There was no name anywhere in the notes or anything about who this was. But the one line that I remembered from his speech was this: "If you want to find the smartest person in the room, find the one who is most compassionate." If you want to find the smartest person in the room, find the one who is most compassionate. Well, we better go to Daniel Webster and get a definition on compassion. Compassion is defined as sympathetic pity and concern for the sufferings or misfortunes of others. The term, according to Webster, originates from the ecclesiastical Latin compassio, or from the Italian compati, suffer with. That's what it would mean. Compassion is often associated with other emotions, such as sympathy, empathy, and altruism, although these concepts have some differences, says Webster. And he goes on to point out one of the differences. Empathy refers more to the general ability to take another person's perspective and feel the emotions of others. Now, that's empathy. Compassion, on the other hand, is what happens when these feelings of empathy are accompanied by a desire to help. I think it was Margaret Mead who was asked once what she felt was the first evidence of human civilization. She said, "A human femur with evidence that it was fractured and then mended." Her interviewer was confused, and Mead explained that in the animal world, a broken leg is a death sentence. The victim is either vulnerable to predators or will die from being unable to find food or water. Mead went on to say that a femur, a human femur, with evidence of a fracture that had healed, was evidence that human beings, other human beings, understood what was going on, that the broken leg implied peril, the possible failure to survive, and that they provided support, food, water, protection from predators, for the disabled person long enough for that bone to be healed. So for Margaret Mead, the beginning of human civilization was the emergence of compassion. But human compassion at its beginning was limited to one's own tribe. The rule was love your tribe, hate the outsider. It wasn't quite the law of the jungle. The law of the jungle would be, you touch me, I'll kill you. But compassion was limited to the tribe. It didn't extend to those who were outsiders, who looked or talked or acted different. Outsiders were still a possible threat, and there was no compassion for them. I thought of Robert Frost describing his neighbor in Mending Wall. Oh, it's just another kind of outdoor game, one on the side. It comes to little more. There where it is, we do not need a wall. He is all pine and I am apple orchard. My apple trees will never get across and eat the pine cones under his pines, I tell him. He only says, good fences make good neighbors. Spring is the mischief in me, Frost says, and I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. Why do they make good neighbors? Isn't it where there are cows? But here there are no cows. Before I built a wall, I'd ask to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom I was like to give offense. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that wants it down. I could say elves to him, but it's not elves exactly, and I'd rather he said it for himself. I see him there, bringing a stone grasped firmly by the top in each hand, like an old stone savage, armed. He moves in darkness, as it seems to me, not of woods only and the shade of trees. He will not go beyond his father's saying, and he likes having thought of it so well, he says again, good fences make good neighbors. An old stone savage, armed. He will not go beyond his father's saying, good fences make good neighbors. The commencement speaker said, if you want to find the smartest person in the room, look for the most compassionate. Look for the one who will think past what he learned from previous generations to ask new questions and challenge old rules. Who was the neighbor to the man who fell among thieves, who robbed him and beat him and left him for dead? The priest and the Levite scrupulously followed the old tribal rules. The ancient Jewish public health rules were embedded in the religion. The man at the side of the road was possibly dead, and if you touched a dead body according to Jewish law, you would be unclean. And if you were unclean, you were shunned by the community. You couldn't take part in worship events at the temple until you went through a complicated process to get clean again. The Samaritans were obviously outsiders as far as the Jews were concerned. They were racially mixed, and they worshipped at the wrong temple, built on the wrong hill, in the wrong town. Jesus' parable points out that the Jewish religious rules of the day made it impossible for the priest and the Levite. Now, Clarence Jordan would call them the preacher and the Sunday school superintendent. But Jesus says that the Jewish rules made it impossible for the priest and the Levite to show compassion to their fellow Jew who had been robbed and beaten and left for dead at the side of the road. They move in darkness, as it seems to me, not of woods only and the shade of trees. And it's the hated outsider in Jesus' story, the dirty Samaritan, who shows compassion for the victim. It's the Samaritan who thinks outside the box. He probably had places to go and things to do, just like the priest and the Levite. But he sees past the rules of tribalism that made him an outcast in Jewish territory. He goes out of his way to help another human being who is in need, because he is in need, not because he's a member of the Samaritan's tribe. The Samaritan does what we human beings do from time to time. We transcend the tribal restrictions of the day, and we respond as one human being to another. That makes the Samaritan not just a sermon illustration for Jesus, but the most intelligent person in the room, the most human and the most humane, the one who has thought over the rules and the prohibitions and finds that compassion is more important. Now, we're having a resurgence of tribalism these days. We hear a lot about hating the outsider, the one who doesn't follow the tribe's rules and norms. It's the old law of the jungle, and we are hostile to the outsider because we feel threatened. It's a survival thing. And there's talk, these days about eradicating those who don't see and do things our tribe's way. If you want to be the smartest person in the room, says the commencement speaker, if you want to find, not be, well, I suppose it would work both ways. If you want to find the smartest person in the room, look for the one who has the most compassion. If you want to be the smartest person in the room, think about compassion. Because that person, that compassionate person, has thought and wrestled with conventional tribal wisdom and has chosen instead a better way. Now, God bless you. If you find value here, I'd encourage you to pass it along. That would be a real privilege. And thank you for your time, and take care, okay? Bye.